"What have we here?" said the wolf in the children's story. Stumbling upon people doing kind, small things. Is this small monster one of us? This is a line from a poem by Naomi, Shihab. I'll share the whole poem a bit later, and as you've likely already seen, it is printed in your bulletin. "What have we here?" said the wolf in the children's story. Stumbling upon people doing kind, small things. Is this small monster one of us? The wolf in the children's story. Perhaps the wolf is that exiled part of our inner selves, that ravenous, heedless, unnerving, dangerous, violent part of our inner selves, sharply critical, occasionally insightful, but rarely merciful. The wolf perceives others as it perceives itself, a small monster. The wolf inside me, it wants to kill or destroy. Often hungry, it will eat whatever it hunts, it cares not what or who. When I want to do what is good, the wolf lies close at hand. But the people doing kind, small things, they too live inside us. More than one inside each of us, most likely. I have a young, pre-verbal part of my psyche, a boy who loves tenderly yet fiercely. He motivates some of my purest acts of compassion. He fears my inner wolf, of course, so I usually keep them separated. He fears your wolf even more. But I have other psychological parts, other selves who do kind, small things. These psychological parts have reached maturity, so they can hold their own against the wolf. The other day, one of our unhoused neighbors asked a member of St. Paul's for something. They asked for something that was innocent enough, but it would have crossed a boundary. They wanted to open the gate of our parking lot after hours. "No," replied the volunteer, flatly, but kindly. "No," he repeated. That's the right answer, my kind and wise inner selves thought. Clear is kind, says Brene Brown. When the volunteer said no, it wasn't his inner wolf talking. It was his better self. Sometimes the humane, good, and even kind answer is no. Boundaries protect everyone, particularly those in the system with the least power. Saying no can be one of the kind, small things we do as God's people. Meanwhile, Jesus speaks to all of us, inside and out, the good and the dreadful, our kind selves, and our wolves. Jesus speaks to my youngest, most innocent self. He speaks to my higher order selves who set healthy boundaries and act with skillful compassion. And yes, Jesus speaks to the wolf. Jesus of Nazareth was all too aware of the capacity for his own lupine generation to miss the point, to stumble and fall, to do the very thing they hate, to choose violence and even murder rather than kind, small things. Further on in the Good News according to Matthew, Jesus rages against his contemporaries. Does Jesus have an inner wolf? Well, he was fully human, so sure. And in his rage, Jesus rants, "You faithless and perverse generation, how much longer must I be with you? How much longer must I put up with you?" And today we hear him lament their mulish resistance to the good news. We hear Jesus say today, "To what will I compare this generation? It is like children sitting in the marketplaces and calling to one another, 'We played the flute for you and you did not dance.' We wailed, and you did not mourn. Even now, some 80 generations after Jesus of Nazareth, our Lord Jesus Christ notices the parts of us that stumble and fall or miss the point. And Jesus notices the dangerous parts of us that are less innocent and less safe than that. Christ notices our worst selves. Christ knows our worst selves and speaks to our worst selves. He speaks to our inner wolves, sometimes in frustration, but he sticks with us. And Christ also speaks to our best selves, tenderly, with God's own universe-transforming loving kindness. Jesus says to us, to all that is good and healthy inside us, Jesus says, "Come to me, all you that are weary and are carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light." This is the good news for people who are doing kind, small things. With God's own fierce tenderness, our volunteers embrace our neighbors, call them by name, and reassure them truthfully that we are praying for them. With God's own immense compassion, we care for our sick, for our friends near death, for our companions whose hearts are riven by grief. And with God's own quiet courage, we strive here at St. Paul's to learn, to grow, to set down our old ways that exclude or harm people, and to take up new practices of inclusion as honest and reflective allies. Yes, as God's courageous people, we are woke. These acts and more, these are the burdens we carry as followers of the crucified and risen one. But these burdens are light. So much has gone wrong in the world, and so often our hearts ache with grief, worry, and resignation. Yet our calling is light. We share a yoke with Jesus Christ, which means we don't have to carry the whole load. We share the yoke with one another, which means no one needs to be alone and unsupported. And we carry on doing kind, small things. This brings me to Naomi Shihab Nye's poem, titled, "You Are Your Own State Department." Now, I feel obligated to say that her poem is not Christian, and when I interpret and engage her words, I speak only for myself, not the poet. But I believe in this poem she speaks to something ultimate, something universal, something that our faith in its own way also touches and proclaims. As you listen, let yourself imagine sharing the yoke with all of us as we work together with God's help to mend this world. We can be what Nye might call secret diplomats, here to make things just a little better, each day carrying worries sufficient for the day, every burden made bearable by our companionship with one another through Christ. You are your own State Department. Each day I miss Japanese precision, trying to arrange things the way they would. I miss the call to prayer at Sharjah, the large collective pause. Or the shy strawberry vendor with rickety wooden cart, single small light bulb pointed at a mound of berries in one of China's great cities before dawn. Forever I miss my Arab father's way with mint leaves floating in a cup of sugared tea, his delicate hands arranging rinsed figs on a plate. "What have we here?" said the wolf in the children's story, stumbling upon people doing kind, small things. Is this small monster one of us? When your country does not feel cozy, what do you do? Teresa walks more now to feel closer to her ground. If destination within 2 miles, she must hike or take the bus. Carries apples, extra bottles of chilled water to give away. Kim makes one positive move a day for someone else. I'm reading letters the ancestors wrote after arriving in the land of freedom, words in perfect English script, describing gifts they gave one another for Christmas. Even the listing seems oddly civilized, these 1906 Germans. Hand-stitch embroideries for dresser tops, bow ties, slippers, parlor croquet, gold ring, pretty inkwell. How they comforted themselves. A giant roast made them feel more at home. Posthumous medals of honor for coming, continuing. Could we do that? And where would we go? My father's hope for Palestine, stitching my bones. No one wakes up and dreams of fighting around the house. Somebody soon, the steady eyes of children in Gaza, yearning for a little extra electricity to cool their lemons and cantaloupes, will be known. Yes? We talked for 2 hours via Google Chat. They did not complain once. Discussing stories, books, families, a character who does what you might do. Meanwhile, secret diplomats are what we must be. As a girl in Qatar once assured me, each day slipping its blank visa into our hand.